Broadcasting live from California, get ready for an hour of pure, unapologetic conservative talk radio. Liberals beware, because this is the Wise Conservative Show.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Wise Conservative Show. I'm your host, Connor Wise. Sorry about that week off. I was feeling a little under the weather last week. But we have plenty of news to cover this week, and it's actually just coming out. On Monday, a video came out that actually showed a CNN producer admitting that the network's focus on the Donald Trump colluding with Russia is mostly for ratings. And noting, again, this liberal audience wouldn't have put up with that kind of treatment of former President Obama. Now, this was in an undercover video made by James O'Keefe in his Project Veritas. Of course, they're famous for undercover videos exposing media and political corruption. And so they went to CNN's Atlanta headquarters for conversations with the CNN producer, James Bonifield. And wow, the videos turned out to actually expose a lot. Here's a few quotations from it. I think there are a lot of liberal CNN viewers who want to see Trump really get scrutinized. And I think if we would have behaved that way with President Obama and scrutinized everything that he was doing with as much scrutiny as we applied to Donald Trump, I think our viewers would have been turned off. I think they would have felt like we were attacking him. I think our viewers right now, I'm not saying our viewers are super liberals, I think there's just a lot of them, and Trump is good for business right now. So that's a few quotations from it, but I actually have a lot of audio from it, so I'm going to play that for you guys right now, and really take a listen to this, because it's basically proving that this entire past year or half a year of this collusion and these stories coming out of CNN, and I'm sure a lot of other news agencies as well, is basically fake news. And what we've been saying all along is true. Take a listen.
Honestly, you think the whole Russia is just like bullshit?
Could be bullshit. I mean, it's mostly bullshit right now. Like, we don't have any big giant proof.
Then why is CNN constantly like Russia this, Russia that?
Because it's ratings.
Because it's ratings?
Our ratings are incredible right now. So, my boss, I shouldn't say this, my boss a couple days yesterday, we were having a discussion about the scandal shoot. He's like, I just want you to know what we're up against here. And he goes, just to give you some context, President Trump pulled out of the climate accords, and for a day and a half we covered the climate accords, and the CEO of CNN said in our internal meeting, he said, good job everybody covering the climate accords, but we're done with it, let's get back to Russia.
The CEO?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So even the climate accords, it was like, okay, a day or so, but we're moving back to Russia.
So I know that might have been a little hard to hear. It was a little quiet here. But basically, this just proved that the CNN president, when they were talking about the climate accords that Trump pulled out of, the Paris Agreement, obviously, when he was pulling out of those, and they covered that for a couple days. If you didn't hear it right there, the CNN producer told them, good job on that, now get back to Russia. And so something that's very big like that, and that's true, that he did pull out of those, he told them not to focus on that, because Russia is getting views, because Russia is what's bringing in money to CNN, and I get it. They're a business. They do want to make money, and that's what a lot of people forget about media. But on the other hand, you also have to realize that this is a journalism. These are journalists. These are people who are supposed to be unbiased. These are people who are supposed to present facts and facts only. But what we're seeing is them constantly being redirected into this this narrative that is all for fake news, into this narrative of Trump colluding with Russia, when they have no evidence whatsoever. And they even admitted that in this video. They admitted that there's really no evidence that they have for it, but they're going to continue to say it. There was, I believe, another video that was just released. I don't have that audio, but it basically said the same thing. It was one of their hosts saying that there's no evidence of what he's reporting, but he still has to just go with it. And so it's kind of like we've seen how this is fake news now. We've seen it. But they're going to continue to report it. And the part that you know that this is true, you can tell that all of this is true because CNN hasn't really come out and said that it's not. CNN hasn't made any big deal about it. And in fact, they're just ignoring it. You know, if this was fake, if this wasn't true, they would be out there and they would be arguing the first day that it was even released because they don't want their name dragged across the mud like that. So you can tell that this is easily true because the fact that they're trying to stay quiet, trying to make it so that no big news agency really picks it up. And to be honest, really the only mainstream media channel that picked it up at all was Fox News, and that's to be expected. So all those liberal channels, they're like, oh no, we're not gonna talk about that because they're reporting the same stuff. They're all reporting that Trump and Russia, the collusion is a fact. They're all reporting that. So they're protecting themselves and protecting their false narrative by continuing to report this and by not reporting this hidden camera video. And honestly, though, this video really needs to be put out there a lot more. It's very revealing, and it proves what not only conservatives, but even some liberals have been saying. There's no proof for this collusion. There's no proof that Donald Trump actually did any of that. And every time they reach into it and they try to find more proof, they can't come up with any. And that's just because this is not true whatsoever. And I'm glad that these videos came out. I'm glad that they do expose CNN. Hopefully it does actually have an effect, and hopefully more people notice it. But something that definitely would have a huge effect on all Americans is that new bill coming out from the Senate on health care. Now, so a poll came out saying that by 2-1, American voters actually oppose the Senate health care bill to replace the Affordable Care Act. But a majority of voters want to repeal at least some of Obamacare. So this was a new poll coming out. It was conducted Sunday through Tuesday, so it's very new. What came out of it was among Republicans, 51% favored the Senate bill. Now, in contrast to 75% who supported the bill from the House last month. So it's definitely dropping a lot as people are realizing what's actually in this. Overall, only 27% of voters overall favor the Senate proposal. 54% oppose it, and 18% are unsure. Now, for comparison, in polling conducted after the House health care bill was passed, 40% favored it, and 54% were opposed, and that was back in May. Now, that's the plan that President Trump in the past called mean, and this was their fix for it, this new Senate bill. Here's a quotation from a Republican pollster, Darren Shaw. Quote, "It seems likely that voters are increasingly anxious about another significant change to their health insurance. I doubt they know much about the substantive differences between the House and the Senate bills." Of course, Senate Republicans released their health care bill on Thursday, and that's after failing to gain enough support to pass it. GOP senators did say that they're going to delay the health care vote until after the July recess. The CBO, or Congressional Budget Office, I'm sure you've seen this, it was reported by every news agency. On Monday, they estimated that the plan would cut the federal deficit by more than $320 billion, and that's over the next decade. But 22 million more people would be uninsured by 2026 under the plan compared with Obamacare. When asked what should happen to President Obama's signature healthcare law, a majority wanted to repeal all of the bill, 28% of it, or parts of the law for 38%. So together, a majority want to repeal at least part of it. And some say that they should expand it. That's 25%, very small. And 12% want it as it is. 1/3 of those who have a favorable view of Obamacare want to repeal at least some of the law. And so this is a lot of numbers that I've thrown at you guys, pretty quickly actually. So let's actually break this down some. What we can see is this new Senate bill, even though it's actually not that different from the House bill, it's very much less supported by the American people, and for good reason. As you know, I did multiple episodes on the House bill where I talked about it a lot, and it's just not what they promised us. It's not that full repeal that Republicans promised on the campaign trail and have been promising since Obamacare was introduced. So I didn't support the first bill. Then the Senate comes out with their version of it, and they leave the majority of the mandates in place. They leave the majority of Obamacare in place. It's, again, not a full repeal. It's basically a partial repeal that doesn't really do anything good. So this bill, again, I don't support it. What the Senate actually needs to do, what Republicans need to do, and this is what I said after the House bill, they actually need to work together with people who have experience in the medical field, people who actually are good at balancing things, and people who actually are conservative. We see all these rhinos coming out with their versions, adding their additions, talking about it behind closed doors, and not allowing any negotiations. That's what's happening with both the House and the Senate bills. They don't allow any negotiations from true conservatives. And again, we had those true conservatives stand up and force it so that we won't vote on this bill. In the last one, we had the Freedom Caucus stand up. And this, we had 4 conservative senators, including Rand Paul and Ted Cruz, saying that they wouldn't vote for this bill as it is. And so this is obviously not a true conservative healthcare bill. What they need to do is just repeal Obamacare completely. That's what every single one of them who is in that office, whether they're establishment or not, that's what they campaigned on. Every single one of them. None of them would have been elected without campaigning on that. The majority of Americans do not agree with Obamacare. The majority of Americans want at least a partial repeal, but a big portion of those want a full repeal, and just about every single Republican wants a full repeal. What we need is a true conservative full repeal that will actually help this nation's healthcare, because what's going on now is not good. What's going on now is this closed-door, backroom deals that doesn't actually help the American people. You know, if we actually force Congress, both the House and the Senate, to use the healthcare that they come out with, I guarantee they would do a full repeal right then and there. If they actually had to use the same healthcare, the same system that they're putting into place as us, they would fully repeal Obamacare on right when they actually had to actually use it, because they know it's a failure. They know it does not work. Yet they continue to leave the most disgusting parts of it in place. They would fully repeal it if they actually had to experience it. So we can clearly see that this new bill just does not work, not only from the polls, but just from actually looking at the details of it. So it's clearly another bust. Hopefully they're going to finally work with the conservatives, the true conservatives in the Senate and even the House, to come up with a bill that will fully work, that will fully repeal, and that will keep conservative ideals in the making. All right, I'm going to take a quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere. This is the Wise Conservative Show.
Hi everybody, Connor Wise here with an exclusive clip from the Wise Conservative Show. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. And every time that these universities take up this new social change that they're trying to promote, every time they take that up, they are taking away from that education instead. Because now they're focusing on these social changes instead of learning like they should be.
Ever wanted to learn the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in less than 10 minutes? Are you looking for the truth about the so-called gender wage gap? Well, my friends, I'll let you in on a little secret. Prager University is a source that I use all the time when preparing for my show, The Jason Veely Program. Dennis Prager and his team have put together a remarkable organization that seeks to explain and spread Americanism through the power of the internet. Their short yet extremely informative videos reach more than 100 million people per year, and they want to reach you as well. Go on YouTube and type in Prager University. or go to PragerU.com for all of their latest content. That's PRAGER, the letter U.com. PragerU.com.
Have you ever wanted to stand up to your liberal professor? Have you ever wanted to help expand the conservative movement? Well, it sounds like you would be a perfect fit for Youth Revolt. Youth Revolt is a team of dedicated young conservatives fighting liberal indoctrination within our school system. If you're interested in being a part of this team by being a columnist or even hosting your own radio show, go ahead and click the Join Now tab at the top of youthrevolt.org. You'll be asked to answer a few questions, and a Youth Revolt team member will respond to you quickly. Be a part of something bigger than you. Be a part of Youth Revolt. Speak without fear.
My friends, I'm going to be blunt with you. There are a lot of frauds out there today. People who claim to be conservatives and yet, in one way or another, believe that more government is the solution to our problems. That's not what conservatism is about, and even more than that, that's not what our Constitution is about. I'm Jason Veely, a recent college grad who has the guts to say what needs to be said without pulling any punches. On my radio show, you can expect 100% pure conservatism every single weeknight at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Join me as we discuss history, liberty, and conservative philosophy in a style that is just as entertaining as it is educational. Who says we can't have fun tearing down the liberal establishment? Tune in to the Jason Veely program live every weeknight at 7 o'clock on youthrevolt.org. I'll see you out on the battlefield.
Love Trump's hate! Love Trump's hate! Love Trump's hate!
Love trumping hate involves a lot more assault and arson than I expected. The Wise Conservative Show, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, only on Youth Revolt.
Welcome back to the Wise Conservative Show. Once again, I'm your host, Connor Wise. So, we all know our friend, Mark Zuckerberg. He's definitely a very prominent liberal, and of course the CEO of Facebook. Everyone knows that. Now, this was a while ago, but I never talked about it, and it really didn't get too big when it first happened. But we saw, actually, that Mark Zuckerberg called on the need to consider universal basic income for Americans during a Harvard commencement speech. Now, it was a month ago, so it's not the newest of news, but it's definitely a big thing to talk about. And, of course, Zuckerberg's comments reflect those of a lot of Silicon Valley bigwigs, including Sam Altman, who's the president of venture capital firm Y Combinator. So definitely Zuckerberg is not alone in these, or not alone among billionaires in these views. So I have the audio of that part. So take a listen, you guys.
Now, today, we have a level of wealth inequality that hurts everyone. When you don't have the freedom to take your idea and turn it into a historic enterprise, we all lose. And right now, today, our society is way over-indexed on rewarding people when they're successful, and we don't do nearly enough to make sure that everyone can take lots of different shots. Now, let's face it, there is something wrong with our system when I can leave here and make billions of dollars in 10 years, while millions of students can't even afford to pay off their loans, let alone start a business. Look, I know a lot of entrepreneurs, and I don't know a single person who gave up on starting a business because they were worried they might not make enough money. But I know too many people who haven't had the chance to pursue their dreams because they didn't have a cushion to fall back on if they failed. We all know you don't get successful just by having a good idea or working hard. You get successful by being lucky too. If I had to support my family growing up instead of having the time to learn how to code, if I didn't know that I was going to be fine if Facebook didn't work out, then I wouldn't be standing up here today. And if we're honest, we all know how much luck we've had to get to this point in our lives. Every generation expands its definition of equality. Previous generations fought for the vote and civil rights. They had the New Deal and Great Society. And now it's time for our generation to define a new social contract. We should have a society that measures progress not just by economic metrics like GDP, but by how many of us have a role we find meaningful. We should explore ideas like universal basic income to make sure that everyone has a cushion to try new ideas. We're all going to change jobs and roles many times, so we need affordable childcare to get to work and healthcare that's not tied to just one employer. And we're all going to make mistakes. So we need a society that's less focused on locking us up and stigmatizing us when we do. And as our technology keeps on evolving, we need a society that is more focused on providing continuous education through our lives.
So in there, not only did he call for a new social contract, he also called for universal basic income. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's pretty simple if you go off of other things that use universal in the name, just like universal healthcare, except for income. What this is the government pays everyone a certain amount of money. So no matter whether you have a job or not, you're getting a paycheck. So what Zuckerberg is calling for is everyone in our nation gets a paycheck. Everyone in our nation is going to be paid by the government. And what I always find interesting about this is it's always the billionaires who call for stuff like this. It's always the billionaires who say that we don't need a wall on our southern border, who live behind those giant walls around their houses. It's always the billionaires who say we need universal health care, even though they can afford the best health care in the country. It's always the billionaires who have never struggled, but they're the ones calling for all of this. They're the ones who think that they know the solutions to everything, that it's their duty to say that we need to completely change the fundamentals of America. It's always the billionaires that say that. It's always the billionaires who think they're the smartest. And why is that? Why do these billionaires like Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, why are they always thinking that they're smarter than the average citizen? He thinks that because one country in Europe, just one, has universal basic income, and it's kind of worked there, that it'll work in America, a much larger country, a much more diverse country, a country that was founded on principles of capitalism and on principles where, quite honestly, someone is going to fail. I know it sucks. It's hard to know that there is going to be unemployment. There is going to be people who are living on the street. But that's just how society works. Calling for something like this would have an already indebted government, $19.9 trillion in debt already. It would have that government pay every single one of our citizens. And I'm sure because they're liberal, they would try to expand it to even illegal citizens or illegal aliens. This would be so expensive, so not even able to work. This would not work in a society like ours. This would not work in a country as large as ours. And quite honestly, those who do not have a paycheck, a lot of them don't have a job because of choice. A lot of people don't have a job. Now, I'm not saying this is all of them. This is probably a small portion of them. But a lot of people don't have jobs because they want to use the welfare system instead, because they don't have to work, but they still get a paycheck. That's a lot of people in our nation. But instead, they want to expand the welfare state by giving everyone money. getting everyone hooked on the government's handouts. Because that's essentially what the liberal ideology is. Expand the government to where they give you everything, where you don't have to fight for yourself to survive, where you don't have to provide for your own family. The government will do it for you. They'll decide all those decisions in your life. That's what liberals want our nation to become. And we're seeing not just Zuckerberg, but a lot of these extremely rich technology CEOs or founders saying that this is what we need. There was an audio clip, I don't have it for you guys, but it was of Elon Musk, of course the owner of Tesla, saying that that universal income is the future. But that's just not true. That would not work. The future is actually shrinking the welfare state. The future ought to be getting a lot of people off of their butts and actually going out and getting jobs. Of course, there's going to be unemployment in any capitalistic society. It's one of the downfalls to capitalism, of course, but there are so many greats that outweigh that one downfall. And the percentage of those unemployed is so little compared to those who are actually thriving under capitalism. Right now, our unemployment is very low thanks to all of the different things that Donald Trump has already done, because he's been opening up the market a lot more. The free market will allow people to prosper. We don't need to hand out money to every single citizen for people to prosper. These people who have never faced any challenges in their life because they've been handed everything, these rich people who have grown up with money and then stayed with money their whole lives, like Mark Zuckerberg, think that they know what the average American is doing, thinks that they know what the average American wants. But it was proven in this last election and over many years that the average American does not want a socialist America, but the average American wants a capitalistic free market society, or else they wouldn't have voted for Donald Trump and majority Republicans in both the House and the Senate. Free market economics are the only economics that work. We don't need a socialized nation. A socialized nation that, quite honestly, would cause the downfall of America. Something like this goes directly against everything our nation was founded upon. Our nation was founded upon those free market ideals. Those ideals that you have to work to get to where you are. Those ideals that if you do put in the work, you can succeed. The American dream. But what these people want is they're going to twist that American dream to where it's not your hard work that gives it to you, it's the government that does. No longer do you have to go out there and work to actually make a living. We'll give you money for doing nothing, for not contributing to society whatsoever. That's what they want when they say this. And upon this, they want universal health care. They want universal college. They want all of these things paid for when there's just no way in reality that any of that would work. There's no way in this society, in America, the United States of America, that we will ever have those programs or that they would ever work. Obamacare was the closest we've ever been to universal health care, and it has been the biggest failure of any policy in United States history. We have different states across the nation trying to push for all these universal things, all these liberal states, but not even the prospering ones, such as California, the one that has a surplus, they can't even afford it. Our taxes would have to be raised. That goes against our founding principles. Our freedoms would have to be limited. That goes against our founding principles. And our economy would have to change. That goes against our founding principles. There is nothing in this notion that is good for America, and nothing in this notion that sticks with what it actually was founded upon. Clearly, this is just another misconstrued idea. Another idea that the liberals don't actually think about, but instead they're going to present it as something that would work perfectly. Sadly, they have a lot of those ideas where they don't actually think about it before they propose it. But moving on, there's this, obviously Susan Rice. We talked about her a little bit ago. She hasn't been in the news cycle too much recently. But I did cover the story of her basically being called out for unmasking certain Trump people and what resources she actually used to do that. Well, now Susan Rice is actually coming out and talking about that in interviews. Of course, she was the previous national security advisor under Obama. And now in an interview with journalist Michael Tomsky for New York Magazine, Rice reportedly questioned the criticism she's faced dating back to even Benghazi. She said, quote, "Why me? Why not Jay Carney, for example, who was then our press secretary who stood up more?" Tomsky noted in the piece that Carney, quote, "isn't an African-American woman, of course," and apparently asked Rice whether that is the key factor. And Rice left the door open, saying, quote, "I don't know. I do not leap to the simple explanation that it's only about race and gender. I'm trying to keep my theories to myself until I'm ready to come out with them. It's not because I don't have any." But Rice then mentioned other prominent female figures like Hillary Clinton and Condoleezza Rice, who faced, quote, ad hominem attacks, suggesting a correlation. When asked about the comments, a Republican Capitol Hill source pushed back, quote, "This is screaming out for attention." She's saying, "I don't know why they all started picking on me to begin with." As to the suggestion of race and gender being a factor, the source countered then, quote, "Why would there be a subpoena for a white male?" Now, that was a reference to the fact that Rice is not the only focus of the congressional probe into that unmasking, and investigators have issued subpoenas to 3 different agencies, the NSA, CIA, and the FBI. And those subpoenas have asked for unmasking information related to 3 individuals: former CIA Director John Brennan, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Samantha Power, and of course, Rice. Now, she's not the only focus of congressional frustration either. Senator Lindsey Graham had a tense exchange with the top intelligence community lawyer at a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on Tuesday, where he complained he still doesn't have an answer on whether his communications have been monitored. So it's not just Rice in the center of all these investigations. It's not just her being picked on, as she likes to say. This is not an issue of race and of gender. But that's what they always go to, isn't it? We notice in so many different cases, so many different investigations and what have you, where the left just screams that it's racist, where the left just screams that it's sexist. But that wasn't even a factor whatsoever. I've noticed over the years that when a liberal doesn't know how to actually support their arguments, they just call the other side racist or sexist. And that's how they've gotten along for so many years. Because when they do that, the liberal media props them up and says that that's true. When they do that, they get support for it by other delusional liberals. But we can clearly see, through all of this evidence that I've already said, and of course there's so much more, that Susan Rice wasn't picked on for being a woman. She wasn't picked on for being African American. This is just another ploy trying to get attention, trying to make herself feel like the victim. They always want to make themselves the victim. But that's just not true whatsoever. Republicans are not as evil as they would like to tell the majority of Americans. We're not these evil, sexist, racist, old white guys that are in our 60s that condemn anything from modern times. That's not what the average Republican is. But they get it in their narrative every time that we're being racist, that we're being sexist, just so that they can try and take a moral high ground. But that's not exactly what happens every time. They're not actually the ones who take moral high grounds because they lie about everything. They take these twisted turns, they twist words so that they seem like they're the victim. And that's not what should be happening. That's not how a true American acts. And honestly, when you're under investigation for this, you shouldn't be blaming it on race. Actually look at the facts. Actually look at the fact that she did all this. There's already proof of her doing all of this. But she's not going to admit that, even though the proof's already out there. So they just like to make up excuses on why they're doing all of these different things. All right, I'm going to take another quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere. This is the Wise Conservative Show.
Hi everybody, Connor Wise here with an exclusive clip from the Wise Conservative Show. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. How haven't all of these protesters realized that they are the exact reason why Donald Trump was elected in the first place? How haven't they realized that them being crybabies about every single thing in life is exactly why the American people rose up and voted for Donald Trump? They are the whole reason that they have all this misery currently.
If you got a business, that you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
Get out of here, you idiot. Sorry about that, folks. Jason Veely here, host of the Jason Veely program. I'm a 22-year-old conservative who is fired up and ticked off at the direction the progressive left have taken this country. Join me every weeknight at 7 o'clock as we promote liberty, advance conservative principle, and work to restore the Constitution of the United States. I can get loud and I can get passionate. How can we afford not to when so much is on the line? Tune in to the Jason Veely program, live every weeknight at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on youthrevolt.org. I'll see you out on the battlefield.
Hi everybody, Connor Wise here with an exclusive clip from the Wise Conservative Show. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. And every time that these universities take up this new social change that they're trying to promote, every time they take that up, they are taking away from that education instead. Because now they're focusing on these social changes instead of learning like they should be.
Calling all young conservatives. Have you ever wanted to write for an online publication? What about host your own conservative radio program? Now you can, thanks to youthrevolt.org. Youth Revolt is a conservative media network for young people, the goal of which is to educate our fellow Americans, and also to expose the left-wing indoctrination that goes on in classrooms across the country. Become part of a team that is dedicated to taking the country back, one radio program or opinion column at a time. If you're interested, go to youthrevolt.org and click on Join Us on the top of the page. Fill out our brief questionnaire, and one of our representatives will be in touch with you in no time at all. The time to reclaim our future is now. Be a part of something that's bigger than yourself, and join the movement today. Youth Revolt. Speak without fear. Ever wanted to learn the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in less than 10 minutes? Are you looking for the truth about the so-called gender wage gap? Well, my friends, I'll let you in on a little secret. Prager University is a source that I use all the time when preparing for my show, the Jason Veely program. Dennis Prager and his team have put together a remarkable organization that seeks to explain and spread Americanism through the power of the internet. Their short yet extremely informative videos reach more than 100 million people per year, and they want to reach you as well. Go on YouTube and type in Prager University, or go to prageru.com for all of their latest content. That's Prager, the letter U.com. prageru.com.
Love Trump's hate! Love Trump's hate! Love Trump's hate!
Love trumping hate involves a lot more assault and arson than I expected. The Wise Conservative Show, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, only on Youth Revolt.
Welcome back to the Wise Conservative Show. Once again, I'm your host, Connor Wise. So, there's so many different ways on college campuses to offend someone. There's so many ways from just saying you're a conservative to saying that you don't support abortion. But now an even more ridiculous way of offending other students on college campuses is talking about your homework. So this is just coming out. A Stanford professor, Ruth Starkman, he was writing in Huffington Post. He said by merely uttering the words that your homework was easy, that it's a microaggression. So this is a new low for the left. Here's what he actually wrote, quote, "Sure, you had no ill intent and absolutely nothing racist in mind at all. But by merely uttering the words out loud, you risk a microaggression because you don't know who in class may have struggled with the assignment. Trying to explain why an assignment wasn't too hard for you is also a microaggression. And that's what Starkman is advising students at elite colleges like Stanford. So don't even think about telling peers if you've already been exposed to a subject or idea in high school. Quote, not everyone went to your high school, had your fortunate circumstances, or such a dazzling delivery room arrival. And even if they did, they might still be suffering because of the genuine challenges of the assignment. Fundamentally, Starkman says, some students struggle while others breeze through because of an injustice, namely, quote, unevenly distributed knowledge. Yeah, let me repeat that for you guys. Unevenly distributed knowledge. You see, in Starkman's mind, any student who comes to an elite university with a decent educational foundation is excelling because of their wealth and privilege. Chances are, Starkman writes, your parents paid substantial sums of money for that knowledge, either in property taxes in highly resourced school districts, or in private education, or in pricey enrichment. Quote, your response, I already had this in high school, really means not only do I have rich parents, I somehow took exactly the right courses to be perfectly prepared. Congrats if you did. Try not to be a jerk about it. Yes, that's right, folks. Paying a lot of money in property taxes is now another form of privilege that all of us should feel guilty about. Now, if you get a better education in high school, you should feel guilty because you're privileged. Now, if you are just smarter than someone else, which happens in human nature, it's just science, well, you're privileged, and you shouldn't be saying that something was easy. You shouldn't be expressing your thoughts on an assignment, because that's so rude. That's being a jerk. That's not keeping everyone's thoughts in mind. Our college campuses have become so misconstrued. Our college campuses have become this different safe space that doesn't allow for people to actually thrive. Because now if you are thriving, according to this, you're privileged. Now if you're thriving, you shouldn't actually thrive because that shows how uneven the distribution of knowledge is. These liberal professors and liberal students are getting out of hand, folks. They're getting to the point where I'm not even sure if we can ever save them and bring them back to reality. These snowflakes have gotten to a point where I don't even think they realize that they're talking about something that just isn't true. They're talking about something that is completely and utterly false. No, you're not privileged for paying more in property taxes. In fact, I'd say you're worse off because you have to pay more in taxes. No, you're not privileged because somehow you ended up smarter than someone else. That's just life. Some people are smarter than others. That has nothing to do with anything other than just pure chance or life. That's nothing to do with you. It's not your fault. You shouldn't feel privileged or guilty about it. There's nothing you can do to change that. The only way that you can change that, according to these people, is to act like maybe you're having a hard time in that class. To act like you're as dumb as the dumbest person in the class. so that they feel included. But that's not how life works, folks. All of these snowflakes, once they get into the real world, are going to have such a hard time. These people who have these microaggressions in the middle of a class, they're not going to be able to get through life. Because in the real world, if someone's better than you, they're going to get the promotion instead of you. If someone's better than you, they're going to get a pay raise. They're not going to try and be all, oh, I'll work at your level instead so that you don't get offended. That's not how the real world works. And these snowflakes need to realize that. Because the second they get out of these colleges, they're not going to be able to do anything with their lives. Yeah, I know they might not be able to get a job in the first place because half of them are majoring in 13th century feminist studies about Africa. But those who do actually have a major that can get them a job, they're not going to be able to do anything with that job because they're so used to these safe spaces. They're so used to being coddled like a baby. But the real world doesn't coddle you. The real world doesn't make sure that you're always okay. The real world doesn't make sure that nobody is offended. And to these people, anything could be offensive. The way someone sits down is offensive to some of these people. Just being yourself is offensive to these people. Every single thing is somehow offensive to them. They're not going to make it through life this way. They're not going to make it through the real world. Because now saying that homework is easy is a microaggression. It's going to be allowed on college campuses. That's just extreme. They're going to extremes now. And it's already been bad, folks. But they're getting worse and worse. But speaking of getting worse, I already talked about them once today, but let's talk about them again. CNN. Well, we already know that they're basically the leader of fake news in this nation. Well, now they've reached an all-time low. Now they're using a beloved children's character to attack President Trump's temporary travel ban. So this is definitely a new low for them, folks. The network produced a very bizarre Facebook Live chat that featured CNN reporter Calissa Ward, Sherry Weston from Sesame Street, International Rescue Committee's David Miliband, and Elmo, a hand puppet. We all know who Elmo is, though. And Elmo said during this interview in this Facebook Live chat, quote, "They like to play and learn just like Elmo and all his friends at Sesame Street. Elmo thinks it's important to know that everybody is the same deep down, and that's very important." CNN reported that Elmo visited a Syrian refugee camp, calling the trip really wonderful. Really wonderful. So now CNN is using Elmo to try and get their propaganda out there. They're using Elmo to try and convince people that Trump's travel ban, temporary travel ban, is not good. That there's no terrorists and refugees. That everyone in the world is perfect. Even though terrorism does exist, but they don't like to talk about that. See, all of these people try to claim that these refugees are not harboring terrorists. All of these people are trying to claim that these refugees from Syria are perfectly safe. But let's look at Europe, folks. Every single nation within the EU has taken refugees, except for Poland. If you look at the map of where all these terrorist attacks have happened, it's in all of the EU, except for Poland. That's a direct correlation, because they haven't taken any of these radicalized refugees. Now, I'm not saying that all of these refugees are potential terrorists. Not all of them are. But there's actually a lot of them that are radicalized, that just try and blend in. There's no way to tell. And that's exactly why we have this temporary travel ban that was just partially reinstated temporarily. And that's what's actually going to help our nation as well. Because that's what's going to ward out those terrorists. They don't have a temporary travel ban in the EU. They don't have that. And look at the amount of terrorist attacks that have been happening. But using Elmo, as CNN just did, someone who obviously children love, someone who has been teaching children for decades in this nation and probably in other nations as well, and using him trying to convince people and basically brainwash little kids into thinking that these refugees are all perfect, that is such a low that I don't think has ever been reached before. It's a low that shouldn't have ever been reached, but it's a low that is being reached now. They're basically trying to brainwash our nation's youth. They're trying to brainwash the kids and brainwash the nation into hating Donald Trump. But we already know that they have an agenda against him, with all of the facts that have been revealed about their Russia collusion stories. They don't care about the truth. They have a huge agenda, an agenda that is anti-Trump, an agenda that is essentially anti-American. Because America voted in Donald Trump. America wants this temporary travel ban because it'll keep us safe. But they don't like it personally for some reason. Just because Trump produced it, Obama had many travel bans, but because Trump produced this one, he wrote it out, he worked with people to make this, it's not good. Because Donald Trump made this, they don't want to support it. And now they're using Elmo, a children's puppet, to actually get their message across. And that's a low that no one should have ever reached. That's a low that I'm even surprised that even CNN reached. All right, that's all for today's episode of The Wise Conservative Show. I'm your host, Connor Wise. You can find me on Spreaker.com/The Wise Conservative, YouthRevolt.org. Look up Youth Revolt on Facebook as well. Instagram.com@the_wise_conservative. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in, and as always, God bless.